Patch 2.6 puts a lot of focus on the Genius Society, especially on member number 64, Dr. Primitive, in the new Trailblaze Continuance mission, and on Polka Kakamon, member number 4 in the new Simulated Universe expansion. Between the two, I'm personally more invested in Polka Kakamon, not only because she is a character that has been mentioned a lot in the game and at the same time we know very little about, but also because I am sick of this Lambanana Monkey song. If I hear someone say Bana one more time, so naturally, I have spent quite some time exploring the new expansion, the Unknowable Domain, and believe me when I say the story was gripping. Nothing like the Slumber Banana story that will haunt your sleep with this cursed banana song. Instead, you will be hunted by a lady in candy-colored dress with her scalpel in hand as a punishment if you ever become too smart for your own good. Anyways, this expansion gives us more Polka Kakamon lore. I cheer, you cheer, Herda cheers. I know she does because she is obsessed.
Hey, Lord of Silence! Are you listening? I'm member number 83, Herda, and I want to meet you. I believe you and I will have a lot to talk about.
So it is not to anyone's surprise that somehow Herda has figured out a way to get Polka's attention and bring her out of the shadows. And it all started with a conundrum, a theory that Herda solved in her childhood and made her a genius. The theory is called the solitary wave theory. It is a theory that could answer a conundrum about the future. Is the future of the universe predetermined, or is it chaotic? This theory was proposed by a scholar named Petivia Adler Somerville who lived in the era of Scholar's Strife. To put it into context, the Scholar's Strife was an era that took place shortly after the death of Robert II and at the end of the Mechanical Emperor's Wars. If you're wondering who the heck Robert II is or what the Mechanical Emperor's Wars are, the majority of its lore is covered in the Gold and Gears expansion. But if you haven't the time to explore that or simply cannot be bothered, I got you. News, as they always do, once extended an invitation to a genius whose interests leaned towards the destruction of mankind. This was Rupert, a mechanical being who became member number 27 of the Genius Society. He discovered the anti-organic equation that aimed towards the extermination of organic life forms, human included. This is the first Mechanical Emperor's War, and it went on for several Emperor eras until Polka Kakamon put an end to it by killing Rupert. Later on, his memory and the anti-organic equation was inherited by a human who went on to style himself as Rupert II, and he started the Second Emperor's War. To compensate for what his organic brain was lacking, he created an inorganic neuron cluster of celestial-level computational devices, basically a cosmic-level brain. This is known as the Scepter System. One day, influenced by desire for control, he decided to use the Scepter System to expand his mind, an experiment he called self-coronation. However, before he could achieve that, Polka Kakamon showed up and killed him, allegedly. Now, with Rupert II dead, it was only a matter of time before another genius rose to the call, took over Rupert's Scepter System, and started another war. Or so the prophecy foretold, a prophecy proclaimed by the Quantum History School, a school of the Intelligentsia Guild that, according to Herda, once served to make predictions for the future but have now become a group of scammers that use a series of complex calculations for fortune-telling. The guild, who had been handed over the ownership of the Scepter System by the IPC, scrambled to find a solution to avoid the prophecy from being fulfilled. So they held a congress to decide who would own the scepters. Or so the initial plan was. Eventually, greed took over. The possibility of owning a genius that could pledge an allegiance to the guild overwhelmed them, and so it sparked the Scholar's Strife. This era of history was what Herda had extrapolated within the simulated universe. However, during the simulation, an unknown void appeared within the expansion. Herda, who had gone to inspect this chaotic unknowable domain, had been gone for 34 system hours by the time Trailblazer arrived at the space station. It was possible to forcefully eject her externally, but Herda's current location was a bit difficult to reach and they were running out of time. The next best solution was for Trailblazer to retrace her steps and facilitate her extraction from the inside. And to no one's surprise, Herda was found fairly quickly. She was unharmed, simply unaware of how much time had passed, busy peeling off unintelligible information of the unknowable domain, standing on the boundary between two time periods while at it. It's not that Herda was unable to come back, she simply forgot to. Herda then talked about the circle of knowledge. One's knowledge is comparable to a circle. The greater the knowledge, the larger the circle, the more unknowns lay outside of it. Since she began her research on knowledge, Whenever she was about to break through her circle of knowledge, she would encounter some kind of obstacles. Mechanical failure, data corruption, threats to her personal safety, you name it, she had encountered it. All sort of unlikely events would happen and stop her from leaving the circle. Herta believed this massive void appearing within the simulation was yet another one of those unlikely obstacles, hindering them from gaining certain knowledge of the past. Now, remember our scholar from earlier, Pativia Adler? The solitary wave theory that she proposed, the origin of it, combined with the unknowable domain that opened up within the simulation, could be just the key for Herta to expand her circle of knowledge. It could lead her to find the knowledge singularity, a discovery so profound it could permanently alter the definition of knowledge, which is huge, all things considered. We're talking about the discovery of fire, the early questionings of gravity, the time and space relation, which is also too good to be true. It could be a trap, as Scrollum suggested, a trap laid by another genius. While Herta acknowledged that could be the case, she refused to back down. Instead, she asked Trailblazer to collect more Scepter's data, and if enough data was gathered, they might just be able to reconstruct Rupert's consciousness within the simulated universe, thus gaining a fifth collaborator on the project. The dialogue options on this part was so funny, by the way, because Trailblazer was like, "Yes, I really wanna meet Run May's wine buddy." Or, "You found the serial killer?" Or, "Don't tell me it's the guy whose student almost transformed me into a monkey." But none of that mattered because Herta had her eyes on Rupert II, which also did not matter because she in fact had her eyes on Polka Kakemon the whole time, and the invitation to Rupert II was nothing but a trap to get Polka's attention. Before we get there though, let's talk about this solitary wave theory real quick and its connection to the origin of the simulated universe. As I've briefly mentioned, the solitary wave theory was proposed by a scholar named Pativia Adler. Before she realized it to be a wave, what she observed was a signal that came at her at a constant 13-minute interval. It was only after consulting another scholar that she thought of viewing the signal's existence from a higher dimension, and realized that it was in fact a rippling wave, its origin and destination unknown. Now, that is a haul of gibberish for me that has zero background in physics, and I won't pretend like I understand the nuance, but if I may, since the relation between time and space is mentioned in this quest, that means it exists in the Honkai universe. So I would like to imagine Pativia was talking in the context of gravitational waves that happen in the fabric of space-time. See, in his theory of general relativity, Einstein said that massive accelerating objects, things like black holes orbiting around each other, would disrupt space-time in such a way that waves would propagate in all directions away from the source. These cosmic ripples travel at the speed of light, carrying with them information about their origins. And instead of 3-dimension, space-time is a 4-dimensional object that combines the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. This time dimension, the extra dimension that is taken into consideration, could be what the other scholar meant when they suggested Pativia to view the signal from a higher dimension. That was how Pativia knew that the signal was in fact a rippling wave in space-time and knew how to locate the origin of this ripple. When Pativia arrived at the source of the wave, she found herself at the ruins of Rupert II's empire. The star that orbited Rupert's now empty Iron Throne was the source of the solitary wave, as well as the core of the scepter system. Rupert II planned the self-coronation experiment to expand his mind using the scepter system, right? And now with the core within her reach and the emperor long dead, Pativia could seize the system for herself. She could seize the power for herself. She could self-coronate and crown herself as the genius of the prophecy. The prophecy that was proclaimed by the Scammer Skull earlier. And so she connected her mind to the core, and all scepters across the universe reformed into a complete nervous system, ready to serve Pativia, their long-awaited new ruler. But then, as she was about to ask her question, Pativia was seized with a moment of self-doubt. She was a Mundanite, a mere scholar, leagues away from a genius. With that level of intelligence, could she really crown herself? That fleeting moment of self-doubt stopped Pativia from crowning herself, and instead she asked to receive a brief moment of Noos's thoughts and wished that future generations would also be able to capture their divine wisdom. Soon, her mind was flooded with information, and rather than her actively recording the knowledge given to her, it was more like Noos forcibly instilling knowledge into her consciousness. The formula that Pativia noted down from this moment was later known as the solitary wave theory, a conundrum that remained as such for almost 100 Ember eras until young Herta solved it, elevating herself to the rank of geniuses. So, I suppose if anyone wonders what differentiates a Mundanite and a genius, this is the answer. Pativia, who was already a renowned scholar by that point, could only note down the knowledge instilled in her mind. And then there was Herta, casually solving the theory when she was a child. This theory also allowed Herta to lay the extrapolation foundations for the simulated universe, which is pretty cool if we consider the purpose of the simulated universe itself. See, Pativia had wished for future generations to also be able to capture Nous' divine wisdom, right? And that was how she was left with the solitary wave theory. Then Herta solved the theory and used it as the extrapolation foundations for the simulated universe. Extrapolation that is meant to uncover the secret of the eons. And not only the eruditions, right? We have captured the thoughts of other eons as well within the simulated universe. The existence of the simulated universe itself serves to fulfill Pativia's wish. Just like clockwork, Nous foresaw Herta solving the theory in the future, and so they left Pativia with the formula in the past. Almost as if the future is predetermined by the past, which is something that Herta agrees with to some extent. See, when she solved the theory, Herta obtained a constant. According to her, this constant is the limit to the unstable index of the universe. When the index is less than the constant, the future will fall into the ascertained trajectory. This is where free will ceases to exist and the future is predetermined. Should the index exceed the constant, the future will deviate towards the chaotic unknown, which is kind of straightforward, right? The future is predetermined up to a certain point. Problem is, this constant is not really a constant. Thanks to the influence of the different paths in the cosmos, the constant has been constantly rewritten. So is the future predestined or is it chaotic? It depends, Herta said. Polka Kakamont, however, would like to disagree. Oh boy, we are this far into the video and not a single mention of Polka since the first minute? You almost thought you got clickbaited, didn't you? Well, apologies for the roundabout way, but there was just a lot to talk about. If I simply talked about Polka Kakamont right away, you're probably gonna be like, huh? What is she yapping about? The scholar's strife, the circle of knowledge, and the solitary wave theory need to be established first because as much as this expansion is about Polka Kakamont, it is also not. Pativia Adler was the main character of the story, while Polka was a shadow that stuck with Pativia at every turn, orchestrating everything, from her discovery of the solitary wave to the brief moment of self-doubt that stopped her from self-coronation. Just as how she was there in the era of Emperor Rupert, she was the one who killed the emperors, both the original and the reincarnation. She was there afterwards to ensure that the prophecy never came true and that Rupert's scepter system never got to be utilized ever again. While there is little to know about Polka, even less of what she looks like, there are two things that could hint her presence. One is her flashy candy-colored or pastel-colored dress, and two is the butterfly. The dress is her trademark, something that she would wear when she is out to kill. The butterfly is a metaphor of the chaos that she wants to annihilate. Have you seen the Kill That Butterfly curio? That scalpel belongs to her. Another thing about Polka is that she believes in Nous' calculations, and she follows them to perfection. Nous once calculated that the Emperor and his empire will cease to exist, referring to Emperor Rupert and his machine empire. But there was no mention of Polka being the one to kill Rupert in that calculation, or the mention of Rupert being the one killed. But Polka believed the calculation would come true, and so she made sure of it. So following these hints, you would start noticing her presence around Pativia. She was there when the scholars were holding the Congress to decide the ownership of the scepters. She was the scholar who suggested to Pativia to observe the signal from a different dimension. She was the one who poisoned Pativia's mind with self-doubt. She guided Pativia from the beginning, sprinkling doubts in her mind along the way, knowing that Pativia was brilliant enough to locate the core of Rupert's scepter system, but not confident enough to seize the power for herself. That way, Polka ensured that the Emperor's creation would never fall to anyone's evil hand. Pativia's failure to elevate herself to the level of geniuses and her success in solving the conundrum she left behind had all been calculated by Nous, as all questions and problems of the universe have been, and Polka was there to see it through. Which brings us back to the constant that Herta obtained and the circle of knowledge she is confined to. While I originally described the constant in a simple graph, the constant might as well be the border of the circle of knowledge. Polka Modern Geniuses is a way to contain the universe's unstable index below the constant. The geniuses are the unstable index. The border of the circle is the constant. So it's not that Polka is targeting all Genius Society members, she is targeting individuals who are stepping too close to the edge of the circle. It just so happens that most of these individuals are Genius Society members. They are individuals who pursue knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and they have made it their lifetime goal to reach a knowledge singularity, a point existing beyond the circle of knowledge. And it was for the simple reason that she doesn't want finality to come prematurely. Rupert's massacre of organic life forms would have eventually destroyed all civilizations. Rupert II's self-coronation would have perfected the anti-organic equation, eventually destroying everything as well. Member number 7 Bodan was proving the existence of phlogiston, one of the materials used by Rupert to build his kinetic arm. This time around, Herda was the unstable index within the simulation. That was why Polka showed up, the simulated version of her gaining sentience. Herda knew this, and that was why she told Trailblazer to be extra careful before diving back into the simulation. While we could say that Herda might have put Trailblazer in danger, she did come prepared. Within the circle of knowledge, nothing is unpredictable. This is Polka's noble domain. She has Noos's calculation by her side, and because everything happens just as Noos has calculated, probability and coincidence means nothing here. However, once the limit is reached, according to Herda's calculation, everything becomes unpredictable. And that was what we witnessed within the simulation. Since Herda used the solitary wave theory as the extrapolation foundation of the simulated universe, the constant that Herda knows to be the border between predestined and chaotic future also exists within the simulation. Skrull modified the code of the simulation, flooding the system's limit of instability, and it made everything in the simulation unpredictable. That was why, despite Polka's confident stroke of shutting down the chaos, proclaiming that all chaos moved according to her instructions, she did not see Aha coming. The system had breached the constant by that point, so they were no longer within the predictable realm. Polka's knowable domain had become the unknowable domain. See, Herda had looked forward to meeting Polka for some time now. Last time Ranmei visited the space station, she brought up the topic of adding a 5th collaborator to the Simulated Universe project. What if Polka's the one responding to the invitation? Skrull asked, and Herda said that's even better. Their view of the future cannot be more different than one another. While Polka believes the future is predestined and is doing everything to keep it that way, Herda says, well, it depends, and continues to reach for the unknown. Polka believes she is enacting Noos's will by killing all the butterflies of chaotic possibilities, but Herda argues that perhaps Noos wants some chaos to exist. Otherwise, why did Noos allow Rupert II to inherit Rupert's memories and eventually build the scepter system? Which did make Polka pause, and eventually she decided that Herda was sharper than the rest of her victims. In the end, the Lord of Silence rejected Herda's invitation to join the Simulated Universe project and simply left. All of the scepter data might have been destroyed, but the extrapolation was not necessarily a failure because Herda got to ask her question to Polka and got to hear Polka's answer. A rejection, yes, but an answer nonetheless. Now she could only hope that Ranmei managed to get a hold of her wine buddy, member number 55 Yu Qing-tu, and recruit her to the team. Well, this piece has grown longer than I initially planned, which is funny because in the beginning I had no idea what to write about, just that I wanted to talk about Polka Kakemon. Now 3,000 words in and I barely scratched the surface. But I will pause here for now because I don't like editing long videos. 10 minutes is good, 15 is okay, more than that is a nightmare. If you managed to stick around till the end, thank you and congratulations. Not many people will reach this point. There will be a part 2 because I just learned what the word antinomy meant, and I think Hoyo was onto something when they named this quest Antinomic Vault. I'll get into it in the next video. I will see you in that one. Bye!